I've known Heli for quite a few years. It's a great presenter at the conferences, and Heli will be talking to us about how she's used Oracle database and Apex and a variety of tools to track COVID exposure in Finland. And again, we get to see a sneak preview of some of these sessions, and this one's really interesting. So take it away, Heli.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining. So I'm going to tell you about things that we did to kind of prevent COVID or stop COVID in Finland. It is not an easy task, but we are trying our best. I have Karsten Charski with me today here from Oracle. So if you have any very, very deep technical questions about our solution, Karsten is here to answer all the questions. But we'll see that in the end of the presentation. So my name is Heli. People know me as Heli from Finland. I have graduated from University of Helsinki with a master's degree and currently working on my doctoral studies. I have been working on IT and with Oracle for quite many years, but anything to do with data and databases has always been very close to my heart. And I think Spatial is seriously something in a database. I'm a CEO for Miracle Finland, Oracle ACE Director, Oracle Groundbreaker Ambassador. And something that always surprised me is that I have been listed as one of the top 100 influencers in IT sector in Finland for 6 years in a row, which is quite amazing. Don't ask me why. I'm very proud and happy, but I don't know why I'm on the list. So I'm a public speaker and an author. I have written 2 books. The first one about database designing and the second one with 4 other people about SQL and PL SQL. So today I will talk about altistumiset.fi, which is the web page where we have exposure data. So this is how it looks like. What is this all about? Well, it enables individuals to actively check if they may have been exposed to COVID-19. It is a database of exposures, which is something very unique. We don't have this information, this data anywhere else in Finland, only in our database, because we have been collecting the data since the beginning of, well, almost beginning of the COVID. And we can do analysis using this exposure data, which is unique. So having this data available to combine with all other kind of data is quite interesting. Where you hear is where people can go and check if they have been in a place where COVID has been around. I will show this in more details a bit later. So how did it all start? Well, there used to be a block and a Microsoft Excel sheet where the volunteer people were collecting the information. So as you can imagine, this is probably not the best possible combination for data to be analyzed, and also not the easiest way to collect it, because if you collect in a block, that doesn't help much with really understanding the data. You have to copy the same data to Excel sheet to be able to analyze and to be able to have charts and so on. So I got a Twitter message very late in one of the evenings from an ex-colleague of mine, I think about 25, 30 years ago. And he sent me a message, do you know anybody who could help? He was quite desperate because the block and Excel was not a good solution. So I replied, let me sleep and I will think until the morning and I will get back to you when I wake up, and I try to find a solution for you. So why would it be a problem? Well, the rest is history. It was a problem because there was no money. All these people were volunteer workers and they had simply no money at all. Well, 10 working days later, after this message, September 25th, we went to production with altistumiset.fi. The version I show you now is, of course, an improved solution. This is not the first version, but the first version was actually already pretty good. So 10 days and we were in production. I think this is quite impressive. So who's working on this? We have people who are collecting and inserting the data to our database. We have people who are analyzing the data. We have people who are building and maintaining the application, actually applications. We have 2 applications. All these people are volunteer workers. There's no budget, no money, nothing. And find a solution for that. Well, Easy solution. I actually figured it out already while I was asleep. I didn't have to wait until morning to wake up and find the solution. During my sleep, I suddenly realized Oracle free tier is everything we need because we need a database and we will have ATP, which means we don't have to worry about the database itself. It's easy to install, easy to use, easy to back up and so on. So this would be a perfect solution for us. Apex is something we can use to build the application quite easily. It will not take years to build this application. We can do it very fast. And we all know that it's much easier to understand things if you can see pictures. And maps are really a way to show where COVID is. So we wanted to have a spatial and maps to be able to build um, maps for people to see and query data. Of course, we also have load balancer, we have ORDs and so on. So how was it built? So we have one database, the ATP, and we have two applications. One of these is for inserting and maintaining the data with very strict authentication. So all our volunteer workers have their own credentials for logging. And then one for everybody to see the data and the analysis that we have done for it. This is completely without any authentication. So people can freely go and see the data. So the web page is called altistumiset.fi, which means exposures.fi. I will show you a little bit how it looks like. So I will start it again just in case. So we also have it in English, and I think you will prefer that from Finnish. So I will show it in English. So when you come to the page, you will first see the current situation in Finland. You will see the map, how we are doing as a heat map. You can see this is the area in Finland where we have most of the cases. Well, actually, the winter vacation is next week, so maybe these people will travel up here and we will see something different here. We'll see. I'm a little bit scared of that. We don't have any restrictions on traveling, so people are free to go. Actually, today we had, well, this is yesterday's records. We always tell yesterday because we don't tell what's going on today, only yesterday. So based on this information, since yesterday, we have 6,000 exposure events in Finland now since we started collecting the data. So we can see the exposures and how many people are infected in Finland at the moment. You can check the exposures by date here, how many each day. And the day here is when was it published in newspaper or media and so on. You can also go and see the exposures per month. So this will show January, this will show November and so on. And the same thing about infections. So how many were in December and in January. So it all started with schools actually. People were interested about knowing exposures in schools. Actually, quite many of our volunteers are teachers. So people were interested about knowing what's going on in the schools. So on the top, you can see exposures in schools in total 30 days and 7 days. You can go and query schools in Helsinki, maybe comprehensive schools in Helsinki, and so on. So you can filter and see what's going on. And you can follow the link to see how it was published, so what was told about this particular exposure. I already mentioned where you here. So here you can go and see your healthcare district area, your city, maybe hobbies, and you can see what kind of places in your area has exposures and when. So quite important information to know. So if you have been in this particular place, this one here is a gym. So if you've been at the gym certain hours, certain days, you might want to be extra careful if any symptoms show up. Total exposures shows everything. So all kind of exposures. Where you hear is only public places that you might have been, but total exposure shows also elderly homes and that kind of things with the same kind of filtering functionalities that you can use. if you realize that some of the things that you already know about exposures is missing, you can always go and submit a missing exposure event. And this will be shown to our volunteer workers, and they can either accept it or deny this to be added in our database. We also have some analyses. These analyses are made by our volunteer analyze people. They have charts, and then they have a description or analysis what was going on and why does the graph look like this. This is unfortunately now only in Finnish. And then we have the maps that I'm here to talk about. So we have two different kind of maps. We have maps of exposure events. So this will show a real exposure event somewhere in Finland, and you can even see more detailed description about it. When was it on news? What's the address? And something special about whatever our volunteers decided to type about it. So here we have the blue ones are something that happened more than a week ago, and then we have red ones that are more current ones. Don't have any of those here. Here's the red one. So then we have these heat maps. We have two different kind of heat maps. I will explain them in detail a bit later, but I will just show how they look like. So this is for seeing how we are doing in different areas. And you can use the dates to filter the situation. If you want to compare situation 2 months ago to today, you can do it easily with this. So this is the application that we are talking about today. So it all starts when our volunteer people add new exposure events in the database. So we have two different applications. This one is for inserting, and the one that I showed you earlier is for seeing the data. So I'm going to Apex now so I can also show you the code. Well, probably I will open them both here. I will just go to, this is our test environment. Whoops, not easy to type. Demo effect. Apps. I went to the same place. Okay, who cares? So in the Apex, we have two applications. We have 102, which is the application you already saw, and 103, which is the one for adding exposures. And all that you will need is in this sample application that is built by Karsten. So we will talk about that a bit later. So when the people come here and they start adding new exposures, they go to this exposure application where they can add new, this is unfortunately only in Finnish, so now you have to learn Finnish. No choice. So they start adding, they select the city, which will find the district that they are located. Then you choose what kind of place is it? Is it the kindergarten? Is it school? What is it? Then you will start typing the place. If there has been already exposures in that place, it will find you automatically the address, and I will take here the particular place. Now that I have the address, so only if I select an address here, the coordinates for this location is recorded. Otherwise, if I don't select any address, there will be no coordinates. So here it will select, this is the address. So these are the longitude and latitude for that particular location. So this is how they add new exposures. There are other functionalities too, which I don't go to details in with, but this is the detail you want to see. So how does that happen? So, okay. It is, oh dear. Log in again. It is happening here. So when you have added the address, as I said, it's the only place where this will happen, is that you will have the street address. And under the street address, we have a dynamic action. Oh, I can't see my own screen. This is annoying. I don't know where to put this, here maybe. we will set a value to this particular item using the street address, zip code, and the city. And using that, we use this plugin, Oracle Allocation Geocoder, and we serve it our country and the particular address, and it will find us the coordinates for this location. And it will be saved here in our database. When we save it to the database, we have a trigger that will find the spatial data for these coordinates, and that will be also stored in a database. So this is what happens so that we are able to really use the coordinates in our application that you just saw earlier. So in this application, we have those maps I showed you earlier. So we have the map that shows the places in details. Remember that? I will show it from here. So we have the map that will show the locations in details. So this map finds the information also using a plugin in an Apex. By the way, I didn't mention that. I already said earlier that everything had to be free because we didn't have any money. In the beginning, I thought that we will not be able to do the maps and the spatial. Well, the spatial, I knew it will be free because Oracle announced some time ago that machine learning and spatial are free to use. But I was afraid the map service would cost us something. But then I learned, thanks to Hans, that if you use these Apex plugins, you can use Spatial also for free. And that's why we built this system. So this map here, how it works is that we are using this Oracle HTML5 Maps region plugin, and we will have a SQL query where we will find all the information needed. We are finding the place where it happened. We are finding all kind of information that you can see here when you click. Okay, this one doesn't have information, but you will see the information about the exposure event. And here also, we are using the geometry data to find the right place. And we are using the colors red to show those that are most current ones and blue to show those that are not so current. And using that information, we show that on the map. So this is a particular place in the map. Another map I mentioned is the heat map. So we have two different heat maps. We have one based on the zip code. So this one doesn't use the address, it only uses the zip code. So we have one table that has information about one particular coordinate for each of the zip codes. So it's based on the buildings in the area and so on. It's very, very mathematical way of finding a coordinate. But the point is that everybody in all the addresses in that particular zip code area has the same location, has the same coordinates. So that's the way we can show it red in that particular area. So here, again, we are using the same plugin, and we have a query where we are asking the information needed, and then we will show it in the map. So all here is based on these plugins that Karsten will answer any questions if you have, that are very easy to use, and SQL queries are very easy to write. So building these maps is not difficult at all. So the other heat map we have here is based on the city. So for this, we again have coordinates for each city. So there's one coordinate for Helsinki, one coordinate for Espoo, and so on, so that we can show the heat map correctly. And it's the same thing as you saw in the other map too. So we are using a plugin, we are using a SQL query, and then we are showing the map to you here. Sorry, as the town level map. And it looks a bit different compared to the zip code map, as you can see. So not very difficult to build at all, I would say. So what I just showed you was how to add an exposure. how we have built the location maps, how we have built the heat maps using the postal code. So the trickiest part here was to find the coordinate for our postal codes, the zip codes, as well as city codes. So what would be the correct coordinate for each city in Finland? So what did people think about this application? Well, this is a country of 5.5 million people. The first 24 hours we went to production, we had 100,000 people visiting the website. After we had some publicity, we had 600,000 visits per day, out of which we actually had 300,000 in 2 hours. And by the way, we were using the free tier cloud, and it was able to support that, which I think is quite great. So what we are going to do next is we are going to have more data and different kinds of data. And hopefully, when we have more and different kinds of data, we are able to do more analysis. We are able to use machine learning maybe and do all kind of cool things. So building up data. Real-time analytics maybe would be very interesting to know. Well, real time means yesterday's data because all the data we have here is usually yesterday's data because our volunteer workers are doing other things during the day, and in the evening they will add the data in our database. And the same goes with all the infections because the government is publishing data mostly the next day. So we will not do today's data analysis, but tomorrow's. Oh, yesterday, sorry. So machine learning, definitely something I'm looking forward to. Machine learning will be very interesting to try to predict what will happen in the future. Who knows what else we will be doing? Well, I don't know, but I can tell you that this has been an amazing project to see what you can do with a free tool, well, free tools in plural, without any money and in such a fast uh, time. So if you have motivation to do things, anything can be done. The power of volunteers is enormous. So if people are volunteering to do something, they are serious about it. So these volunteer people who've been working on this project, it's been amazing to watch because they are very passionate about it and they are always willing to do their part of the work. And also that Oracle free tier was able to handle 600,000 activities per day, of which almost 300,000 was between 10 and midnight, one of the days. The reason for this peak was that we had our webpage was announced in the news, 10 o'clock news in the evening, which is something that everybody in Finland watches. So when it was shown there, everybody went to see what is this page about. So that's why we had so many people coming on the webpage at the same time. And I can tell you, I was very scared. I was sitting here by my computer until probably 1 or 2, worried that something will happen. Nothing happened. It just slowed down a bit. People got some error messages every now and then, but mostly everything was just working, no problem at all. So that was a big surprise to me because I have seen bad things happen on IT. So I was really worried. Amazing. So you can do a lot without any budget. So this was done with zero money because people were working voluntarily and we didn't need any licenses or any hardware, any software, anything like that. With just no budget at all. So you can do a lot to help the community if you just want to. So we just did it to help our country to fight COVID better. And hopefully this will help. Who knows? We are still in the middle of the fight, but at least this will help people to know if they should go and get tested and if they have been in a place that is really a bad it's risk. And what I have been told by people is that they go to the webpage to see if they are planning to travel to another city and they see here in a map that that city has a lot of exposures, they don't go there at all. So they use it also to prevent being in a place that might have exposures. Because usually, if there has been a one exposure, there will be another one quite soon because somebody was infected. So a picture really is worth more than 1,000 words. So you can go and search a lot of things here with all these cool functionalities to search data, but really the map tells much more. So map has really been a good improvement in our application. That was all the official I was thinking to tell you. And now Karsten and I are very happy to answer any of your questions. Okay, and I already have here questions. So there's a question, what is the difference between exposure and infection? So exposure means that you have been in a place where COVID, somebody having COVID has been in the same place with you. So it is possible that you will have COVID in the future, but we can't tell it for sure. If you have been infected, it means that you have COVID-19. So infection means that you are really sick. You already have it in your body. But exposure means that there's a risk that you will have COVID-19 because you have been in a place where COVID already existed. So that's the difference between exposure and infection. So exposure is possibility to have COVID, more serious possibility than you would have otherwise. So a place that COVID has been. So what are the privacy laws in the country and who has access to the data being collected? Well, do insurance companies have access to this data? Well, the data is shown. I said that we are allowed to use the map service with the plugins. The same goes with this data. So you are able to use the data you can see from the web page, but everything else that is not shown in the web page is not shared with people. We don't collect any personal data. Europe is very strict with this. So we don't even collect the data that you have been on the web page. So we can't tell afterwards who has been on a web page, and we can't say that you were there 3 times yesterday. So we don't collect any personal data about people. But we do collect data that we don't want to publish. That's our estimates. So if we read a newspaper telling that there was an exposure in, let's say, a gym, or a supermarket, and the media estimates that 3 people were exposed to COVID because 1 person was sick and 3 people were close enough to this person to be exposed to COVID. We are very doubtful about that because we already know that it's airborne. So it's not you have to touch this person. It can be in the air. So when you are breathing the same air, you might be exposed. So we know 3 people in the big supermarket exposed to COVID sounds ridiculous. So we might add more numbers when we estimate that there were probably 20 people. Our estimate is 20 people. So we might put that in our database for future purpose because this is a sophisticated guess. But we don't want to publish it because it's our guess. It's not official information. So all that we show in a web page is official data. So it's something that we know as a fact from public media. And things we don't tell people are those that we have estimated ourselves. So we will see maybe this data will be more broadly used later, but now it's only the user interface that we will publish the data with. How long did it take roughly to build the first version of the application? 10 days. We were 3 people with normal work, and on top of the normal work, we were building the application in 10 days. So in 10 days, we published it. So yeah.
Heli,
and yes, please.
there's a follow-on question in the chat, which I assume you have not yet noticed, which is, what was it? Oh, hang on, where is it? I kind of lost it.
They share the HTML5 map plugin link.
Oh yes, well that's more of a question to Carsten, I guess. Anyway, but no, I've seen there's a following question is down in the chat, which is, did you use the data modeler for that purpose?
Oh yes. Oh, this is going to be embarrassing. So no, we didn't use, and I'm going to use. We will do it. But when we started it, we had all the data in that Excel I mentioned you earlier. So we just took the Excel, we made it proper Excel for a database, and we just added to the database using Apex functionalities. So we didn't really design that database, but we have reverse engineered it since, and we are hoping that it will be really from the future data that we are going to use. We will use Data Modeler to really design the database. But this is really the embarrassing answer because I am the Data Modeler person. I love the tool, and all the databases have to be designed. So this time the designing was made using Excel. This is embarrassing. But yeah, that's how it was. But we were in such a hurry, so we just wanted to take it as well. Actually, if I tell you more about this being in a hurry, so after the 10 days, we went to production, and not one day too soon, because the next day it all broke totally. So the exposure numbers the next day after we went to production were just 10 times more than ever before. So suddenly the numbers were just impossible with Block and Excel. So we didn't really spend too much time on anything that was not mandatory to do. Okay, is this Apex application available for download? Oh, not really, but we can talk if there's something that you particularly want to have from the application. So no. Or maybe if you had 11 days. Yes, if we would have the 11th day, we would have used Data Modeler for sure. This was already very close that we used it, but we ran out of time.
Coming back to the download question, maybe it's worth mentioning that the core pieces, the plugins for the interaction with the map, they are actually available. And maybe that's also a good thing to make people aware of. There is, and has been for a long time, what is known as the Geolocation Showcase, which contains these plugins, so that you get all the interfacing with the geocoding service, with the map visualization service, and a couple of utility functions, so that you can get these things coded in Apex very quickly, very easily. But maybe I'm the wrong person to actually comment on that. Maybe I should actually hand over to Karsten.
Yes, maybe Karsten wants to talk about this. So this is the application sample Geolocation Showcase. Go ahead, Karsten.
So I can, if I can share my screen quickly, I would walk people really quickly to steps to get to that application yourself. So that is rather simple. So let me quickly switch over to Apex. So we are here. So hello from my side as well. The most easy way to get an Apex workspace is the public evaluation instance apex.oracle.com, right? So everybody can sign up for a free workspace there, and that gives you the ability to test drive Apex. So that should be most simple. Apex is also available on the always free services. So if you go to the Oracle Cloud, sign up for an always free autonomous database service, there is Apex contained as well. So whenever you have Apex, you should have Apex 20.2. That's the latest version. And whenever in Apex, after logging in, you typically find typically this screen. That's your first one, right? Where you have the application builder. That's the core piece of Apex, a bit of SQL plus on the web, if you will, a minimalistic project management thing, and the app gallery. And we will go to the app gallery. And the app gallery contains the sample Geolocation Showcase, which Hans and Heli already mentioned here. You click it, and then you are asked, oh, do you want to install that? Oh, yes, of course, I want. And then you go ahead, and you can indeed try this out on the demo evaluation instance. So this installation should take no longer than 20-30 seconds. And then you can run the application. And this application contains all the components which Heli leveraged in that application. Here, of course, there is no actual COVID data. This application just contains a bit of dummy data, right? Just to introduce the components. So we have the overview map, for instance. And as you can see, that application contains a few address points from Oracle locations in UK, Germany, and Austria. It's visualized on a map. You can click it, you can edit it. And here you can also have the geocoding. It's on the left here, the geocoding interface. And all these components can be reviewed. So if you're an Apex developer, want to see, oh, how is this built? Then have a look into Page Designer. You have seen that on Heli's PC before. And here we see typical Apex elements, a region, a page item. And here we have the map. And the map consists of a SQL query, right? And some attributes which determine how the map will look like. And this is available to everybody, right? As soon as you have the Apex workspace, and there you go. You don't need the download link. You just need access to an Apex workspace, and then it's there on your fingertips.
Karsten, will you show where to find the plugins? There was a question.
That's a good one. So now you have played with the application, and you want to build your own application and use the plugins there as well. So where are the plugins? You don't want to change this application. You want to build your own one. So then go to Shared Components, Plugins. And plugins, for those who don't know it, Apex is generally extensible. So Apex has a lot of built-in components like a chart, a report, a calendar. But Apex is beyond that. It's extensible. So you can build your own, we call it a plugin. And these components become available into the application as native plugins. So this application contains a plugin for a map. And after that, the map region becomes available as it was a native region. No difference. So let's assume we want to play with our own application, all right? So let's just pick anyone. So this is an empty application. So when I go to Page Designer in this one, there should be no, let's get rid of that one. And so there should be no map region here, right? It's empty because that application doesn't contain my new plugin. Take that out again. So now we have to get the plugins into our new application. So we navigate to plugins, and then we can create. I can create it as copy of something which already exists. And now Apex will tell me, oh, here are applications which already contain plugins. This one looks good. This is a sample Geolocation Showcase. Oh, I can have all these plugins. You might figure out which you want, or you could just get all of them, all right? And there we are. Now the plugins are part of our application. And we can have our map component right now, right? And then you would start building the SQL query. Have a look at the help text. For these plugin attributes, they explain how to use it. So the SQL query has to have a specific structure. Apex, the plugin, wants to have specific column names to be returned. And once that's there, go ahead and build your mapping application. And when in doubt, oh, how to do this, how to do that, have a look into the sample application, which shows you how the components are put together. And that's nothing else which Heli did. So, Heli and the team, and I actually didn't have too many questions. So it obviously wasn't too hard to build these maps.
That was very, very simple. By the way, one of the plugins I didn't mention you showed here was the center, the zoom level, which is very useful for your maps, because when the user goes to a certain level in the map, let's say Helsinki area, and then goes to another map, it remembers that you wanted to see Helsinki. You don't have to zoom in again to Helsinki because of this plugin. So I just showed 2 plugins to you, but there's plenty of others that are very useful to make your user experience better.
And while we are on it, so you can now, everybody can now see themselves as the exclusive circle, right? So now sit tight, right? You will get a sneak preview on what to expect next from Apex. So this is all safe harbor, of course, right? You know, whenever Oracle people talk about future directions, it can come, everything can turn out completely different, and this was all a bad dream then, right? So having said that before, right, let me give you a sneak preview on what we are working for the next Apex release. We are talking about maps, and one or the other may say, oh, but I always have to import the plugins and always to deal with the sample application. Couldn't it be easier, right? And that's what we thought as well. So we thought a map has to be a native component in Apex, right? And that's what we will plan to deliver with the next version of Apex. So this, what you're seeing now, you cannot download it today. It's a sneak view into the future. So let me show you. First, we need some data. I don't have COVID data, but I have a source with earthquake data, which is a REST service. And so I will now show you how to very quickly create an earthquake map based on a RESTful service. And that gives you an impression about what will be possible in the future. So let's first get access to the earthquake data. This comes from the USGS, that's the American Geological Survey. They have a JSON feed containing earthquake data. And the first thing I need is to make this earthquake feed available to Apex. That's what I'm doing now. Apex calls this a REST data source. And so I'm configuring the endpoint URL. Apex parses the response JSON, gets me columns, rows, and data types, and everything which is needed to turn that JSON into rows, columns, parse, execute HTTP requests. Don't need to worry about this. Apex does it for me, right? So we have a REST data source. There we are. Let's have a look into this. And since we are talking spatial here, we have a look into the data profile, which is the Apex metadata about rows, columns, and data types from that REST API. Earthquakes have a location, which is the geometry attribute here. And right now it says JSON document. That's the default for Apex, but Apex still supports SDO geometry. So if that is GeoJSON, and I know for the USGS feed it is GeoJSON, GeoJSON can be returned as JSON or as SDO geometry. So now I have that REST data source. And actually for Apex, that's as I had an external table. It's not an external table, but it feels like an external table pointing to that REST API. Only for Apex, but you can now see how easily we can start working with this. Let me go to Page Designer. And let's now add a map page. Right? REST data sources are there in 22. They are there today as well. However, the map, and here we are, there is a new component, map. Right? That's new and or will be new. I will call this earthquake map. The maps can have multiple layers. My earthquakes are earthquakes. What else? Oh my man. So point markers are good. And here we can, where the plugin only supported SQL queries, the native component is of course better integrated with the core, with the Apex infrastructure. So we can pick the REST source. And then we just do a bit of column mapping. The geometry column is here. So what shape do we want to have? So let's have a look. Which one do you like? The flag pennant. Let's take that for now. And I think that should be good enough to give it a first try. So you'll see I didn't configure too much. I didn't code too much. Once we run that, you see a map with earthquake data, right, without having done anything, right? Of course, local tables will work similar. We have, besides point layers, we also support heat maps. It looks a bit different than the plugin, A lot of experiences from the plugin went into this component. This is the heat map, and which also supports much more configuration options. So when you look at the color scheme, they are different ones we can pick here to visualize that. We can also take a value column into account. So now the heat is calculated based on the density of points plus the magnitude of the earthquake. So that is then a different calculation, which leads to slightly different color picture. Oh, and here you can clearly see it's a feature in development, right? Not everything works perfectly. That's something we need to look into, but that's how it's supposed to be in the future. And the basic message is when Apex 21.1 will be out, you won't even be dependent on the plugin anymore. Everything will be available as a native plugin.
Excellent. Thank you, Carsten. Thank you, Heli. That's great.